Join the coven. Today's video is brought to you by Audible. Audible is offering my listeners a free audiobook with a 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/GothicRose and browse the unmatched selection of audio programs. Download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Just go to audibletrial.com/GothicRose to get started today. The Wishing Well, a story written by CooKooJack. As far back as I can remember, I've hated people. For the most part, they're annoying, narcissistic half-wits who live life in a superficial bubble, brainwashed by faceless corporations that might as well be gods to them. Yes, I know I sound like an edgy teenager who's had one too many existential crises. But I promise you, this is not the case. In fact, my teenage years were some of my best, with all the torment everyone else has been going through. It was in my childhood where I grew to hate people the most. Everyone else was so happy back then, and for all the wrong reasons. I was happy too, but not because of the disillusion that life's easy, and that everything will be laid out for me. But instead it was the joy of seeing everyone else realizing what I already knew. I know that most reading this will think I need help. They'll assume I'm cold, rude, cynical, and all of the other things needed to check the boxes off of being a garbage human being. And on the surface, they're right. From the age of 7 and onwards, I did need help. Help not from some psychologist or psychoanalyst, but help from myself. Every time life would hit me the hardest, I would remember. But by then, it was too late. Never mind, I'm getting ahead of myself. My parents thought I was depressed when I was younger, but I knew I wasn't. When I got nasty and vitriol with people, and they would call me a psycho back, I wasn't sad. I didn't feel alone. In fact, I felt alive. It was like a drug. My drug. I get happy when I see someone's face sink after cursing them out. I get joy in telling people bad news. The happiest days of my childhood were when a kid would come to school crying the day after a pet of theirs died. I would always say to them, "This is just the beginning." But the kids never got it. Not then, anyway. I was raised pretty normal. Whatever normal is anyway. Middle-class family in a small house in a small suburb in New Jersey. I had one sister, Fate, and an Australian shepherd named Topples. Fate was a year younger than me, and I recall her being constantly optimistic in her younger days. She was just like the rest to me, though. She had the same ignorant, unknowing innocence that plagued the rest of the kids our age. It was almost sad. She wasn't as bad as most, but she didn't know what I knew. Fate was still blind. To be completely transparent, I wasn't always like this. Up until halfway through my 7th year on this strange planet, I was just like everyone else. Then, one day, I found the wishing well. My friends. Yes, back then I did have friends before what happened, and I had been wandering around the broken down mall that closed down the town over from ours, though we didn't know it at the time. The owner had apparently been stealing hundreds of thousands from the mall's funding. Rather than trying to buy the place or having a new owner come in, the township decided to leave the place deserted, so they didn't have to deal with the upkeep of the place. Anyway, after wandering around the mall we had been coming to as a hangout spot for the past year or two, for an hour or two or more, all my friends decided to head home for dinner. It was already 6, and their parents would yell at them if they stayed too late. My parents would do the same, but for some reason, I decided to walk around a bit more. After walking in and out of the dozens of abandoned stores for another 10 minutes or so, I came back to the main hall of the old mall. Like I said, my friends and I had been walking across this mall for over a year, so it came as a surprise when I saw in the center of the hall a large, circular wishing well. At that age, I was far more curious than fearful, as I almost sprinted towards the mysterious well. It was made completely of stone, in a perfect circle, a circle that hypnotized the young me. I ran my hand over the stone and felt a substance so smooth. I didn't know how to comprehend it. It was cold and relaxing. It made me go numb. That smooth stone perimeter was the first taste of the drug. The well itself was about stomach high for me, so without second thought, I leaned as far in as I could without falling, and felt the freezing water on my fingers. The second the water touched me, I was no longer there. Suddenly, I was back home in my bed. It must have been a dream, I thought. How could I have been transported from the mall to my own bed in the blink of an eye? I woke up the next morning, the well a distant memory. After all, this was real life. I went to school and saw my friends there, same as normal. Then after the bell hit 3 and we were dismissed from school, the boys and I went to the broken down mall to hang out as usual. I didn't mention the well. It was just a weird dream, I told myself. And as I had thought, when we walked into the main room of the mall, there was no large stone well in the center. We all walked home at 6, and everything was fine. It was only when I was a block from my home when I came back. I lifted my hand from the water and shuddered. That's when I realized I was still at the well. I had just lived through a day and a half of my life, all while leaning over the well. My watch said it was still only 6:25. Barely 5 minutes had passed since I first saw the wishing well. I didn't know what I had discovered, and my curiosity again got the better of me. My hand reached down again and touched the glistening water. That time, I was gone for a week. Near the end of the 7th day, I had convinced myself that the well wasn't real, that it was all a dream inside a dream. Still, I couldn't help but feel strange, like I wasn't really where I was, like I was looking at the world through a different lens. I woke up again and checked my watch. It was 6:38. Again, barely any time had gone by. At that point, I was shaken. My curiosity had worn out, and I ran home as fast as I could. I didn't go back to the wishing well for the next week. As the week went by, I began feeling deja vu, as if I had done this before. It only happened when something didn't go my way, though. The rest of the time, life went on as normal, and I had no memory of what I had lived through in the well. Yet when something bad happened, whether it be a pesky mosquito bite or a bad grade on a test, I would remember the well, and I would remember that I had done this all before. When those moments happened, all I could think of was the well, of the smooth stone, of the beautiful waters. So like the foolish boy I was, I decided to go back there. When I lifted my hand, it was still the hand of a 7-year-old. But a second before, I was 16, getting my driver's license. That's how it would go. I would live in real time for a week or two, sometimes even a month, if I could resist the drug. But eventually, the well would pull me back in. I would go back there and dip my hand, and I would be gone for a decade of my life. I would be 8 years old, and at the same time be 36, alone, without friends, in a crappy apartment. On my 10th birthday, I remember visiting the well for another far-off trip. And when I came back, I was still 10, but I had lived far more than 60 years. I lived through the deaths of both my parents, of my friends, of my sister Fate. It all happened. The experiences were real. They just hadn't happened yet. I'm 43 now, and it's been a hard life. I always laughed at others' sorrows because I knew that my own lay ahead. The lives others led were blind. They had no clue that their road would get rough. But I knew. I always knew. I never remember everything as it's happening, but it's becoming more frequent. Now it's not just the bad that I flash back to. It's the mundane. As I'm getting older, I guess the mundane is the bad for me. Every time I remember the well and how long of a life I've lived, it's always too late. The bad times in my life happen no matter what. I can't change it. The realization comes after the fall. I've only decided to write this down because, as of last visit, the well has gone black. I'm in the real world now. The only reason I'm sure of this is because of the fact that you're reading this. Last time I was in my 80s. But I don't remember what happened right before I woke up. Now I can't see anything, and I fear I've lived through my whole life. That's why I've always hated people. They have what I don't. A true life. One with ups and downs, where you make your own decisions. For me, though, I haven't had a normal life since I was 7 years old.